Hey Nanda,
Hi, how are you?
I'm
Nice to
doing
see you,
good.
Bhaskar.
Nice to see you too. Thank you for joining us. Hello everyone. Welcome to the second episode of our I would say nascent LinkedIn Live experience, where we've titled it as Chronicles of Soft Power, and where gentle meets fierce, and it's one of the reasons I have Nanda on this, and I've been wanting to do this, for some time now with Nanda. So Nanda, I mean, we've discussed this, but for the sake of people who've joined, the whole idea of starting this was that if you read everywhere, there is so much around AI, automation, jobs. Everything is seen as a number and a transactional, um, as if the entire corporate world is nothing but a transactional space. But we know that finally it's teeming with people and interactions, the dynamics of how people work together, manifested in its culture, leadership, the softer aspects of how values are demonstrated every day, and the same tools, same technologies are available to everybody in the world. Why does one company manage to do a better job of it than somebody else? The X factor is really the human element. And the idea was of this LinkedIn Live was to bring people with industry experience, multi generational experience, who've seen probably five tech revolutions happen in their corporate career. And while a lot of things have changed, some things have remained enduring and valuable and are likely to be even more valuable in the future, which is the softer aspects of how organizations are led and how culture permeates across the organization. So the purpose of this was to provide insights, stories to people from learning, from human resource, more importantly from leaders, to go back to first principles of what true organizations are about, what true leadership is about, and learn from people who've been there, done that, and would owe much of their success to their ability to work with people and to lead people and bring that human centric leadership as the key aspect of how they have led organizations. And that was one of the reasons we wanted to have you. So, thank you for agreeing to be with us. This time, we're also attempting to be uh, fast, quick, and very anecdotal. People love stories, and we've had so many conversations. And I know you're a great storyteller. You have lots of interesting snippets. So I want to start with the most important story, which is your story, and really get, for the sake of people who might not have you know followed your career or not had the opportunity to work within the Tata environment, where you spent bulk of your career, to give a short intro into really your career, some of the things that you've experienced. Give us a history of the last maybe 30 plus years that you've worked, maybe in a minute and a half.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bhaskar, and it's always a pleasure to deal with people whom I have known for some time, and then especially on this sort of a forum where you can probably attempt to at least share some of your key learnings and insights that one has been able to gather over the years.
Hmm.
I think for a lot of people who probably have not met me or interacted with me, I must confess that I did not get into HR by design. I mean, it was purely by accident. And it was an accident that happened because when I had finished my graduation, my intent was to become a journalist. And that's what I was
Wow.
training myself for. And I had already finalized two offers off campus to join two publishing houses, and it was almost about to sign on the dotted line to join in when I was waiting at my college to collect all my the whatever was what they call as the TC and other papers when
Mm.
you leave college. And in walks by the principal, and then he asked me, "What are you doing here?" So I told him, "I'm come to collect the TC. I'm going and joining this newspaper, public, I mean, media house." So he asked me, I mean, why are you not doing higher studies? So,
Mm.
and you have to keep in mind these are the early 80s, where the number of seats in PG courses was so limited. So I told them what the answer that came, saying that it's very difficult to get PG admissions because number of seats are so limited and all those quotas, all that are there. So he said, "You must be stupid. Which course do you want to join?" So I had no clue at all. It was the question I was completely unprepared for. The only thing is, having studied graduation for 3 years in the college and every day walking by the principal's room, he had two sets of boards as you enter his office. One side of the list of UG courses, the other side of the list of PG courses. And I very distinctly remember that PG course had on the top, MA in personal management and industrial relations. So
Mm.
without even batting an eyelid, I told him I want to join MA in personal management and industrial relations. So he called out to somebody in his office and said, "Please give him a form and ask him to join." And he walked into his office. So that was the death of my journalistic career and the birth of my, the birth of my human resource career. So that is a clear accident that happened thing. But I can tell you that having been then in the function for the last close to 40 years now, I've enjoyed every bit of it. It's not that there have been no moments of frustration or thing, but I don't think I would have done anything else. Better if I had not had this opportunity. And being in HR gave me the tremendous opportunity to get involved with many other parts of the organization. Like I was
Mm.
always used to tell HR people that they are the only people who have the legitimate right to go into any part of the organization because they're ultimately dealing with people.
Mm.
And wherever there are people, you can go and find out what's troubling them, how you can make their life better. That has to be the philosophy that you take. So effectively, I think having worked across about four organizations in India, two outside of India, and then looking at the whole landscape of how things have evolved, I think what you asked in the beginning, when there is so much of pressure and so much of thing happening, I've seen it happen in very different scales and in very different context. Because I remember when I started work, there was absolutely nothing of computers at all. Everything was manual.
Mm.
And I remember I used to work in a sugar plant which had about 2,400 odd employees, and there used to be a set of guys who would prepare manual pay slips. Actually writing out all components of earnings deductions by hand. So at the end of every payroll exercise, we had a set of people whose handwriting was just superb. They can become the best calligraphy artists. And I remember when we first introduced computers, and I'm talking about desktop computers in offices. This must have been in the 1887, 88, around that time frame. People were scared to even sit in front of it. And there
Correct.
was so much of resistance to computerization, and people all felt that their jobs would get completely eliminated. And I can tell you, having been through that phase, I don't think anybody lost jobs because of computerization. That was never the reason at all. Today, in
Mm.
fact, it has reached a stage where I think we are expecting people to come to join us already being highly computer literate, even when they
Correct.
finish their
Yeah.
course. We don't want to spend time teaching them basics of Excel or PowerPoint after they join us. We say they should come with fully prepared to join. So that's the way
Correct.
the landscape has changed. And
Changed.
I was also been somebody, I was in some other forum, and somebody asked me, do you think AI will cause massive disruption in the employment potential? So I said, if you look at the word laid off as a phrase, I said AI is already embedded into it, because the first word laid has got A and I in it. So I said, so we have to be prepared for it. It's not that it's not going to happen, but does not mean that you will. What it will the takeaway is what job you're currently doing in the way that it is being done, but does not mean that you will become useless. That's not the intent. It is. It is actually going to free up your time to do things which are more value adding.
Valuable.
And
Correct.
yes, and that is really where you should prepare yourself for and look at what can be done. Because the large part of whatever we are, even if I were to look at in the last, almost 20 plus years that I have had HR for various companies, while even at the level of a CHRO, there is some portion of your day-to-day component and work which is very mundane. Which is such simple stuff like today I was even clearing some purchase request and expense statements and all that, which is it's just routine stuff. Actually I've been in my sleep I can do it. It's nothing like a thing. But today
Hmm.
we know that we can have been bots who can do that job. You don't need to have any human interface on it, and as long as everything is meeting the criteria, it will process only any exception it will flag, and that's all that you have to look at. So this is exactly what I think is the potential that we have. So my only submission to everybody who is especially starting their career is that the rate of change will be far more and much more faster than what it used to be in the past decades. That's a
Correct.
reality.
Correct.
Second, at the same time, the opportunity that one will have today is far
Hmm.
greater than what one had 20 years back. That's also reality. But it's a question of how committed you are going to be in terms of shaping your own career. You take ownership for your own career and then shape it. That is really going to be the important thing. Don't expect your boss, don't expect your company to be the one responsible for shaping your career. They will all facilitate it, but you have to take ownership yourself and then make sure that you keep abreast with what's happening, even if it is something that doesn't is not of interest to you. But if your job requires you to learn it and then you have to use that knowledge in the way you carry out your work, you must
Hmm.
spend time to learn that. And I always tell people that industrial relations today is very different from what it was 30 years back. In fact, and many of the students whom I meet today, they have no clue of what IR is, because that's not
Correct.
what they've been exposed to. Even if they go to industrial visits, they're only looking at the more glamorous side of HR and not the way of
The
managing
hard work.
unions, or they're not even exposed to it. Well, that's
Correct.
a reality. And tomorrow you will have a situation where you will have to deal with agentic workforce. They'll not even be humans. Robots will be
Correct.
there. How will you deal with them as a workforce? Maybe there'll also be a trade union act for robots that may happen soon. So
We
all this
never
is
know.
possible. We never
Correct.
know.
Yeah.
So if you're prepared for it, then you will know how you can navigate it and what you can do. So these are things. I think so. To just give you a quick summary, I know I've taken more than that 1.5 minutes that you talked about.
That's
I
okay.
I have been fortunate to have had two important elements in my life. I
Hmm.
think one, working with groups which had a great emphasis on values and the culture. That's one very
Hmm.
important thing. I think the second great input that I had is working with some of the truly remarkable bosses who
Hmm.
will push you and get the best out of you. It is not by putting lighting fire under the butt, but is actually
Hmm.
lighting fire within you. I
Within
think
you.
these
Correct.
were the two components which I think is very important. And the more we can make sure our managers are able to get the best out of their team, any problem is definitely been addressable, and we can any challenge we can make sure that we overcome them. But this is a very important component that I think everybody should look for.
I think the that kind of segues into the key conversation that I really wanted to have with you is we've me personally, and even as Blue Sky Learning as an organization, we've had the good fortune of being able to work with maybe 6 or 7 different Tata companies for different kind of learning, supporting them on different kind of learning initiatives, from Tata Chemicals to Tata Communications to Taj Hotels to Air India, all completely diverse businesses, completely diverse business reality at the time of our engagement, whether it was Air India during their entire change initiative from when they were acquired, when Air India, when Tata Group acquired Air India, and the whole transition was happening, to Tata Communications, where we worked with a very young group of leaders who had taken on special roles for special projects, etc. So while we've seen organizations, Tata organizations, in different stages in different businesses, I have, and my colleagues and I, we've experienced, for want of a better word, a certain Tata-ness that runs through all of them, right? Irrespective of working with plant folks at Mithapur for Tata Chemicals, or working in Singapore with Tata Communication folks, many of whom are not Indian nationals, and in that sense haven't grown up with the Tata name, as a given, in their
Mm.
childhood. Or in that scenario, how would you take three or four things that you would say would define that central nerve that kind of runs across all Tata organizations? And if you can kind of spell out from your own experience, one is what you read,
Yeah.
yours is a more lived experience. If you can say, okay, here are three or four things that really define that Tata-ness, if I can call it that.
Yeah, I think a large part of it stems from the philosophy of the initial founders in terms of making sure they articulated what is important in life and what they should really be looking at. I am sure that if you take any stories about how Jamshedpur was set up, or how,
Correct.
let's say, Mitapur was set up, or even any of the older businesses of the group, you will find that there is a very strong ethos of doing good for society, doing good for employees, and doing good for all stakeholders. I think that's a very fundamental belief behind it. And
Hmm.
having been in the Tata system and having seen a cluster of our companies of all types, we have a very conventional old economy companies, then we have very new age companies that have come in. It's a whole bunch of things. So in fact, this is sometimes even a question that, or a challenge that we face in terms of how do we make sure that some of what is good can be replicated and can be sustained across these various businesses that we operate. Each one of it has their own, I would
Correct.
say, flavor of how they have to be run and things like that. There's nothing common. But I think one good thing which I think is probably unique to the Tata as a group is the fact that I think in the companies have tremendous amount of freedom to do things which is relevant and important for their business, and there is very little of what I would say is as centrally mandated things that needs to be followed. In fact, if you
Okay.
ask me, I think what is only important for the all the companies is you can't not follow the Tata Code of Conduct.
Hmm.
So that is the one important element that is if you want to be a
Okay.
Tata company, you have to follow Tata Code of Conduct. So that is very clear. Whereas what you do in your business, or in your strategy for marketing or for product development, those are all you have to define based on what is suiting your environment. So
Hmm.
what works in let's say in chemicals may not necessarily be the same that you will do in some other industry, or vice versa. It's very
Yeah.
clearly. But both these companies, irrespective of whether they are operating only in India or they're doing a global operations, they don't have the freedom not to say that I want to be a Tata company, but I will not follow the code of conduct. That's not possible.
Hmm.
That is a subscription that you have to do. And the code of conduct, also, if you look at the way it has evolved, from what it used to be when it was first codified and put. It's, if you look at the group is almost 150 plus years old now. It's in fact,
Correct.
we celebrated our 150 years in sometime in 2018. And if you look at in the last maybe this 155 years that we have been in existence, even initially there was a code as an unwritten code. So
Hmm.
that is how the groups were being run. It is just that the first effort of putting a code in place happened maybe 20 years back in terms of putting it into place. But the code also has already gone through two revisions. And what has
Hmm.
happened with every revision is this character of the group has changed from being a very India centric group. It started becoming more global. And then we realized that the code should then reflect what Tata companies would reflect at a global level. And that's how the
Hmm.
way when the upgradation or the changes to the code happened to give it that global feel. And it is very clear. In fact, if you look at the basic fundamental principle has been that the code is sacrosanct. So, which means if you're operating in a country or a business where the local requirement or regulation is lower than the code, you still commit to follow the code.
Okay.
And in case where the local requirement is higher than what the code has specified, you have to follow the higher of the two. So this is really what I think has been a very strong element in the way the code has got thing. And I will focus specifically on people in the code. In fact, the respect for people is part of this code. And we are looking at how do managers deal with their teams, how does the entire system of their appraisal process, the review mechanisms, all geared towards identifying the best and then grooming them towards thing. How do we take care of marginalized or vulnerable communities to make sure that
Hmm.
they're not lost in the mainstream? And I can tell you that having been in the system, I mean, while elements like diversity, affirmative action may all be fairly new buzzwords, there are
Hmm.
strong examples within the group of companies doing this even before it was a requirement. So it is not that it was something that was good to do now and therefore you're doing it. You have been doing it in the past, and
Past. Okay.
what I think has really helped the group sustain is the fact that there is a very strong leadership mandate and drive behind this in across companies. So, which is what make sure that you create the start. So, if somebody tells me how do you replicate Tata-ness, I think it just comes up through the way the
The code
board
of conduct.
interacts. Yeah, the code of conduct is your guiding document,
Hmm.
but the code then gets operationalized in the way the board and the leadership team runs those companies.
Yes. Okay.
And then there is a lot of cross learning that happens. If you look at there would be, let's say, executives of one company who may be on the boards of certain other companies, or even at the Tata Sons level there will be board members who will be in more than one company. So they will
Hmm.
ensure that that commonality of what we need to inculcate is being
Yeah.
done in a steady
It's like
manner
cross
across these
pollination.
companies.
It's like cross
Cross
pollination.
pollination across.
Of the business.
So you
So,
try to get the best of whatever can happen and bring them all together in one place.
so if I were to take this and look at a daily scenario, right? I'm a middle manager in a fairly competitive industry, say Tata Consumer Products, maybe handling Tata Sampann, and you know how competitive the FMCG space is, and I'm out there. I'm fighting the big guys and the small guys in the space. There are local brands I have to fight with. There are national brands that I have to fight with. Um, and there are business priorities that I have. And I'm asking a very daily question because there is the code and there is the board and leadership, and there is the nuts and bolts of everyday running my job as a middle manager. Right? How do I balance my business priorities, and the code of conduct? We've all, and I'm going to quiz you a bit on, if I were to take it one level further and say that the the code of conduct is in some way manifests in the organization's values, right? Across Tata companies, the values might be defined slightly differently, but at the end of the day, there is a central element that runs across all the values that we've seen across the Tata companies that we work with. So, how do I really balance that business priorities and business challenges with my values? And what do I do at that point of choice, right? And
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned this, Sampan, because Sampan was initially incubated within Tata Chemicals.
that's right.
And then later, when the research of business happened, it went to the consumer part of
Yeah.
the group. So we have, I've been very actively involved with in the whole setup, including, I can tell you, I used to conduct ethics workshops for
Hmm.
dealers and distributors. So
Okay.
we used to have it used to be an annual feature as part of our annual sales conference or the annual meetings. There used to be a session devoted on ethics, and the target audience is not employees. The target audience
Okay.
is actually dealers and distributors. Now, what happens in that scenario is that the dealers and distributors also then know that this, even though I may be a dealer and distributor working with 20 other companies whose practices may be very different, when it
Hmm.
comes to Tata, there is a way I'm expected to perform. And if
Hmm.
I don't want to perform, I cannot be a distributor with them. That's the fundamental thing that you emphasize.
Hmm.
It also then helps the dealers and distributor network to know that the way they're being managed by their the company, management team, whether it is the national sales managers or the regional managers, they also have to ensure that this code is then followed. So if I remember, we used to actually have ethics helpline details distributed to every single distributor, saying that if anything is which you feel is not in line with the code, you have an anonymous way of raising this concern, and we will evaluate it and we will get
Hmm.
back and take corrective action. So this is a very, I would say, very strong component by which
Component
we
of
create a thing. And we have had many dilemmas where managers or executives on the front end sales team have come and told us, these are the practices which are happening in the market. We are therefore not being competitive enough when compared to
yeah. I was going to
any
ask you
other
that.
thing.
I was going to
Yeah.
ask.
So
Come 25th of the month.
yeah. So this is
My
a very
offtake is not
common,
there.
yes, very very common by chance. So we always tell them that, see, your success is not defined by 1 month or 1 quarter.
Hmm.
If you have a good product, if you have a good distribution network, and if you're committed to making sure that all parties are benefited by what you're doing, you will hit success. You should not give up just because 1 month it did not happen. And I think to make sure that, if you look at all the products that we have been, it maybe we would have reached much better rates of success had we compromised much faster,
Yeah.
it would not
Yes.
have taken so long. But the very fact that they have been able to sustain over such a long period is
Yes.
a real testament to the fact that if there is a good way of doing business, even if it is slow, it will build.
Little bit.
I'd never have this temptation to go away with give away with something that is so dear because of any short-term interest. And this is a message that we have to constantly emphasize. But more importantly, I think that is where I think is a very important role for managers, is that we still live in a very dynamic environment where individuals will behave differently. There is no magic wand. Like I can't
Yes.
expect that I conduct so much of ethics awareness programs and thing, and I expect everyone to be 100% ethical at all times. It's impossible.
Correct.
There's no magic wand for it. But I think
Yeah.
the process is so strong that if somebody transgresses, action will be taken, and that we don't compromise,
Hmm.
and we take action irrespective of who the person is. It may be a junior most, senior most, does not matter. If somebody has
Matter.
transgressed the code, action has to be taken. It is not only taken, it is also communicated. So we don't mention by name and person the incident. But every quarter to the general workforce, we actually put out a bulletin saying in the last quarter, these were the number of ethical issues that were reported, and this is the sort of actions that have been taken. So this is what I believe is strongly helping to reinforce the fact
Okay.
that there is an ethical way of doing it and it can be
What
sustained.
is non-negotiable is truly non-negotiable, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, which really leads me to an interesting conversation I had, in fact in Mithapur only with one of the senior gentlemen. I think he was uh, some part of the production he was looking
Hmm.
after, and he was invited to speak to the batch who was graduating from their induction and getting into the
Okay.
into the team.
Hmm.
And when some of the questions were thrown by the youngsters, and I'm going to come to that as my next, and perhaps the kind of we can start distilling after that, is that he was saying, sir, and I'm going to speak in Hindi at this time. So he's saying, sir, हर जगह पे फिर बैरियर आएगा, काम हम नहीं कर पाएंगे. So he was basically trying to express, trying to ask that, won't these non-negotiables, whether it's code of conduct, and when I'm going to go one level beyond code of conduct, because code of conduct has a diktat angle to it, but culture has a more inviting angle to it. So I'm going to kind of maybe change the lens here from code of conduct to perhaps a culture, a way of working that you imbibe. It's not necessarily written down the way a code of conduct is written down, but culture is something you experience as soon as you walk into an organization and interact with people. And one of the things that gentleman told, which really stuck with me, was that, why do you see this as an impediment? We see it as actually as a path to success,
Hmm. Hmm.
not as a barrier to success. So we see this as a way in which you can actually um, unequivocally or without doubt know that staying on this particular path is actually an enabling factor. So we see culture as an enabling element and not as a barrier in imbibing the right way to work, so that 10 years down the line you are not in doubt
mm,
about what is the right way to work. And and this is what really struck me. He said that what you don't recognize is at every step of the way as you grow, whom you are influencing is growing wider and wider, whether they
mm,
are in your teams, whether they are outside your team, whether they are external stakeholders, internal stakeholders. As you grow in the organization, your influence goes wider and wider, and everybody you influence is getting a consistent influence from you.
mm,
And in order for that to happen, there has to be that indoctrination. And that really, kind of stayed with me as saying that sometimes we view values and the immediate conversation is, but isn't that a block in the path, right?
mhm,
But perhaps it's actually the enabling path, right? And therefore, as HR managers or as L&D, as leadership, who I think are the three key stakeholder custodians of of culture, especially for people walking into an organization, how you really frame these is so important, because in many places we've seen posters hanging, screensavers, or
yeah,
a six-part series on values on the LMS that everybody is mandated to
mm,
fill, and that's about it, right? No one talks about it, no
mm.
one really looks at it, at any point in time, and that I think is one of the reasons why there is a disconnect with people who join an organization, right? Which leads me to my next question, and this is something that we've now seen. And I'm not going to single out Tata Chemicals, but I'm going to look at organizations. I met somebody in New York recently who's a TCS employee who joined TCS after his graduation in I think 2004,
Mhm.
and he just last year finished 20 years with TCS, and he's in New York, and he's been through and he's in TCS technology world. There was a time in early 2000s where there was such a, I mean, it's not what it is now,
Mm.
right? The more the merrier. You could jump 15 jobs and in 3 years and get stocks and build three generations of wealth
Mm.
in one lifetime. And he um, the conversation with him kind of leads me to my question I wanted to ask, which is, there is this entire multi-generationalness that everybody is talking about, and this multi-generational workforce I have seen in spades in any Tata organization you
Mm.
go to. I mean, in Tata Chemicals, there are places where the dad is working and the son is working,
Yeah.
right? In teams, there are people who are 50 plus, there are 40-year-olds, there are early
Mm.
30-year-olds, and there is early 20-year-olds, and all in one team
Mm.
working together. And needless to say, everybody's perspective, life stage,
Mm.
closeness to the Tata brand
Yeah.
also is so different. So where do you see? How do you see? Do you see Tata either by design or just by, intentionally or unintentionally? Do you see the whole Tata's way as a strength? Do you see it at some point, in some sense, as a way that perhaps needs to evolve or change with the times? How do you view this juxtaposition of the way Tata is and the way the workforce is evolving? Is something I wanted to just quiz you on.
No, I think I mean, it's very clear that even if you're on the right track, you will get run over if you continue to sit there. I think that's a reality.
Hmm.
So it is, and it applies even for these elements because there are certain things which are very broad based, which are very macro level, and these are, they are generation agnostic, they are
Hmm.
business agnostic, they are leadership level agnostic, and they have to be followed as something as a practice. But the way you operationalize it, what works in certain context will have to be dovetailed in terms of what does that particular workforce segment
Hmm.
actually aspire for. And can you then, keeping this broad framework, look at specific initiatives that will address this? So, and the older companies all have this challenge because of multi-generation workforce working together as a team. So, if you look at anything that you're looking at introducing as new HR policies, it's always
Hmm.
how contemporary can you be, and if you
Hmm.
make it very contemporary to the to what is happening, only let's say you have only Gen Z in the workforce and you have no other segment, it
Hmm.
will certainly not appeal to the rest of the organization because they feel this is not very important.
Hmm.
So it is a call to be taken as to what you need to do. And I can tell you, we had this very interesting conversation that we were having when, as a manufacturing company, we introduced paternity leave sometime about 15 years back or so. And it was not a practice which was being followed in the manufacturing industry at all. It was not there at all. And at that point of time, the workforce that probably would have been eligible to benefit out of this policy was probably not even 10-15%.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because all others were past that prime. They would not have, because you had a policy, you're not going to have one more kid. It's
Yeah.
not that. So that was the reality. But we still went ahead. And, we had a lot of discussion and deliberation because said that the reason why we decided to go ahead was we had to attract the best of breed, and we were competing with segments where they were getting fascinated by these perks being offered. So
Hmm.
if you had to compete in that space, you also needed to be contemporary. But we are also very conscious of the fact that you can't shut off this large population of people who have been in the company for long. And
Hmm.
minute you introduce this, they think, why is this being introduced? We never had this benefit. Why are the youngsters being given all this? This feeling we didn't want.
Hmm. Hmm.
So at the same time, when we introduced paternity leave policy, we also introduced something called dependent marriage leave as a special facility,
Hmm.
saying that any employee is dependent when getting married, when we limited it to two, so either son or daughter, there is a special leave almost equivalent to the paternity leave that we give for that celebration. And
Makes sense.
this made the entire workforce of that segment so happy that they say, the company is not only looking at the new generation, also taking care of the older people and doing what is relevant for them. That was, I think, a very important element in
Yeah.
the way we put things
Interesting.
together.
I've not heard that before, so
Yes.
that's quite interesting. Because people would have to otherwise sacrifice their casual leave and
Correct.
uh,
Yeah.
that
So here, then
com-
there was no bad blood at all. They felt,
yeah.
when somebody had when a baby and there's a parental leave granted, he's also happy that when his son or daughter gets married, he can also apply for special leave. So that was a great motivating factor for both the segments.
Hmm.
So we have
So
to
if
consciously look for such opportunity as to how we can
opportunity.
make sure, if you have a significant workforce segment that you need, whose interest you need to keep in mind,
Hmm.
what can you devise, what can you design that will address that and make it better? That should be at the constant lookout of the HR teams.
Makes a lot of sense. In staying with this particular theme, one last thing I really wanted to explore with you was if you were to take your entire journey and you look to the future, many people whom would probably be either seeing this live or as we edit it and put it across as multiple smaller segments going forward, the idea of this is to provide them with tools or insights for the future, right? And not so much seeing what worked in the past. So if I were to kind of challenge you and push you and say, in the in the next 5 6 years, right? If you had to say that everything is changing, but if I were to reflect on the last 40 years of my career, I think these 4 5 things, whether you put it under leadership behaviors, whether you were to, I'm not big fan of buckets, because finally we equate all of them, saying that it's really about human to human interaction, right? You can give it whatever frame you want to give it. But if you were to say that, these are 4 5 things that I think will continue to be important no matter what changes around, right? I mean, I'm going to give you an over dramatic answer, but I mean, example. But if I were to tell you the love for a child, for a parent, right? Centuries and centuries, it doesn't change. It
Hmm.
is what it is, patriotism, right?
Hmm.
These are things that just endure. Just to give you a frame as a
Yeah.
reference, if you were to pick something and say that, from my experience of all these years, and from I see where the world is evolving as leaders, and this I'm specifically calling out for leaders, young leaders, if you focus on these 3 or 4 first principles, you would be able to lead teams no matter what changes around you, right?
Yeah.
What 3 or 4 things do you think you would pick,
Sure. I
as
mean,
a,
this
as
is a
a top
question
priority?
I have not been prepared for, but I'm going to just
I know,
talk
I
about
know.
what
Just
comes to my
I knew that
mind.
this was a,
Yeah.
but I know you enough that
Yeah.
you're just going to speak your mind and it'll
Sure.
happen.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, I wouldn't put a number. I'll just start saying what
Yeah,
comes
yeah,
to my
just yeah.
mind, and
That's
then we
fine.
will
That's fine.
see. I think the first thing which I think is very important, I think, is I mean, as you navigate your career, align to bosses who can challenge you and get the best out of you.
Hmm.
Don't get into comfort situations, that there is a personal connect and relationship and therefore it will work. That is not going to help you in the long run. Whereas if you align yourself with bosses who can not only challenge you with really demanding tasks, but can also use that opportunity to get the best out of you,
Hmm.
that is a tremendous learning opportunity. It will help you navigate any sort of situation in the future. That's one thing which I think is very important. The second important element which I think you have to always keep in mind is that don't look for the easiest thing to do. Always look for the right thing to do. And when I say right, that right may have multiple connotations. It may be right for the company, it may be right for the community, right for the business. So I think as long as you know that I'm doing something that is generally right for all stakeholders, even though it may not be the easiest thing to do, you will find continued sustained success coming to you, because people will value for that additional mile that you put in, because you want to keep this element in mind. So that is the second thing which I think I would really look at in terms of something which I said is really can stand the test of time, and it'll work in any context for the future. The third element which I think is that you have to be a die-hard optimist.
Interesting.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, if you are by pessimist by nature, even an opportunity which is lying in some situation will never appear to you, or it will be completely feeling hidden.
Hmm.
The more optimistic you are, however pessimistic the external scenario may look, there'll be some shred that you will find, which is all that is required. You just have to ignite that small stuff. I always use this analogy of, when this Diwali is around the corner, you have
Hmm.
this huge 10,000 wala cracker,
Hmm.
and this entire 10,000 wala cracker is just being lit by one small wick in one end. That is what I call as the ray of optimism for that 10,000 wala cracker. If that 10,000 wala cracker did not have that bit of optimism, there is no way it will succeed. And that is really what I think is a very important element, that optimism is what helps you see different potential and possibilities in any adverse scenario that you're faced with. So that is the third learning that I would say one has to keep in mind. The fourth and the last important thing is that beyond a point, after you have, let's say, spent 15, 20, 30 years in a particular career, after that, it is not a question of what you want to do for yourself. I think
Hmm.
you can forget about it, keep it aside, don't worry. What you should focus on is what can I leave behind as when something that has been done for others to come and start building upon even further. So you
Build a
you you
legacy,
have,
or
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and it is not just to carry on what you're doing. It is to make them do their job much more better than what you have been able to do by the sort of foundation that you have created. I think these are, I would say, what I would say, it does not matter which organization or which type of industry, whatever it is. But with these three or four principles in which you operate, you navigate your career, it is very, it's almost impossible not to succeed.
not to succeed.
Because,
Yeah,
yeah, you'll always find something or other can making it happen, and the whole environment will come together to make sure it is getting been done if you're able to deal with this. So this is what I thought is what I would really pitch
fabulous.
for.
I'm glad I pushed you to the corner to talk about this, because very valuable thing in our company, we talk about something saying that stay in the stretch zone. The minute you feel a sense of comfort, you kind of stop growing, which is what you mentioned about work with bosses who push you a lot.
Yeah.
And you said about do things that are not necessarily easy. Take the Don't go for the easy way, go for the right way, which is really about coming across as somebody who's trustworthy, who's build that entire aura around you, and it works. I wanted to add one last thing, since we're a learning company. I think the importance of continuous learning to learn and keep learning, as I think become even more um, important today. Right, every day today, and I don't want to only focus on AI, because the whole world is talking about it. And yes, if you don't learn, you are going to struggle. And there is only uh, the world is going to be filled with only two people, either people who are building AI or people who are using AI, right?
Yes.
So, in some way, so AI won't, like I heard somebody say, AI won't take away your job. Your job will be lost to someone who knows how to use AI. So
Yeah,
it's not
correct.
AI you're going to use it to. You're going to use it to another person who's learned something you have not learned, right? So I mean, with that, I want to kind of bring it to close, and with those 4 or 5 key insights. And I wish we could keep talking, but even 1 hour is a lot today, right? A lot more people will, I think, engage when we make it into smaller edits and put it out. But before I close, I just wanted to check, anyone wants to drop a comment or a question. So we've got someone saying action taken on transgressions as important as the intentionality. Great point. Tamal was talking about, saying that that non-negotiableness builds um a certain steadiness and foundational strength of you as an organization, saying that no matter what, we don't compromise. That's how great organizations are built. Even Jim Collins talks about it in Built to Last. He talks about the same thing as well. Ani says, love the cracker element with optimism. So, with that, I want to profusely thank you, Nanda, for your time. I know you've recently taken on a challenging assignment, which has kind of taken you out of your exploratory phase of retirement, and back into the thick of things. But I'm sure an outside in perspective now will be very helpful. And we look forward to connecting with you again, and
Yeah,
do
I'm
living
also
by
looking at it as a part of continuous learning, that I'm trying to now do things that I would have not done in my last role.
yeah. So when you step out, you learn 15 things. When you step back in, you're able to seed those 15 things back in the system. So, and the
Yeah.
system is only better for it. So thank you again, for your time, Nanda. Really appreciate it. Thank you everybody else who's joined in for us. Do when we post on LinkedIn, Nanda is active on LinkedIn. You can connect with Nanda on LinkedIn, and he's very responsive. Write to him, he writes back. And see you all in the next episode. Thanks again, Nanda.
Thanks
Signing
once
off.
again, Bhaskar, and to you and your entire team. A very happy Diwali and a festive season, and we'll
Yes.
keep in touch. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Right. Bye.